Hello everyone, it's me again. I'm here with today's video, which will be what if the Justice League were in Green Lantern the animated series. Every video that started from the Superman video all the way up to here has now reached the culmination point. We have now brought in our Avengers. Well, more specifically the Justice League, since they're like the DC version of the Avengers, but still. But let's begin. Superman would be facing someone like, I'd say, Bloodsport or Metallo, and they have some private information, and Superman tries to stop Metallo but ends up failing because he is caught up with a crime by, I'd say, someone like Livewire, and Superman faces Livewire, but obviously he's losing until someone apprehends Livewire by shooting her with a tranquilizer dart. This would be John Johns, who turns out to be obviously Martian Manhunter. Now, basically, Martian Manhunter would take Superman with him. We then cut to Hal and the gang facing some of the Red Lanterns, like Atrocitus and Lady Bleeze, for example, and they manage to stop Atrocitus, and he is essentially sent to Oa to be charged for his crimes. Now, apparently, someone is watching. This turns out to be a Green Martian. And then another Martian appears, and that happens to be Martian Manhunter, who decides to recruit Hal. We then have a scene with Diana Prince at her job in the museum, where she is met by John, Hal, and Clark. And apparently she decides to meet up with those three. She decides to come with them. Batman is fighting off Killer Croc, but then he sees a letter, which catches his attention, and as he takes out the letter, it happens to be a message from John Johns to meet him, along with other heroes, which catches Batman's attention and leaves Gotham in the hands of his allies. We then see Flash facing off the Tinkerer, as well as some of the rogues like Captain Cold, Heatwave, and Mirror Master, and he meets Hal and Martian Manhunter and Wonder Woman, and so he leaves with them, and he leaves Central City. No, not Central City. Star City, and I was right, Central City, in the hands of Wally West while he's gone. And then they have to find the final members. Hal and Dinah are at home as they find something peculiar. This happens to be a letter, which is from John Johns, in which they leave Connor with Sarah, and trusting that Sarah would take care of Connor. And there you go. They all go to like some sort of place, which can be a museum, and this will be important to the League down the line. But the reason why Martian Manhunter has brought them all here is because Lex Luthor has a plan to essentially unleash an invasion, which they need to stop. And so they decide to form a team of heroes. Flash comes up with a team name, like the Avengers, but Superman's like, no. Because obviously they're Marvel characters. Diana suggests the Justice Society of America, but that's already been taken from past heroes, and so Green Lantern would say the Justice League, and Martian Manhunter would take that as granted. Meanwhile, on Oa, a green Martian appears in front of Atrocitus. That happens to be Malefic. And he breaks Atrocitus out, and then they face off some of the Green Lanterns like Guy Gardner and John Stewart, and even I'd say someone like Kyle Rayner, and they are pretty much beaten. And so Kilowog, Razor, and A are left to defend Oa until Hal comes back. We then see Joker plying his next scheme, and then he hears a car coming up, and that's Lex Luthor. Essentially, their first meeting would go down like how it did in Batman Superman World's Finest, with Joker getting in Lex's car, obviously. And then they reach LexCorp, where they meet up with Atrocitus and Malefic. As Lex explains the plan about the alien invasion, that they're going to find one of the mother boxes to bring in the gods of Apocalypse to Earth, so they could obviously take over the world. And then Lex would present the other members of the team he's building, such as Gorilla Grodd, Aresria, Count Vertigo, and Malcolm Merlin. Yes, Vertigo survived my Green Arrow video. Now, how was Aresria freed? I'm going to say Malefic went to Themyscira and freed Aresria. But now she goes by the name of Fury, since that was the character she was based off of. And apparently, no one in Themyscira, like the guards, they didn't even know she escaped. And so, the villains come up with different names like the Injustice League, the Legion of Supervillains, but Lex likes, the Legion of Doom the most. They then start to form their plan to get the mother box, or at least one of the mother boxes. He sends out Aresria and Malefic to get the mother box that's in Themyscira. And Atrocitus also joins in as well. They fight the guards of Themyscira and end up killing some of the guards. And of course, Hippolyta sees this, but Aresria decides not to interfere with, the queen because reasons. They just came for the mother box and then they leave. And Hippolyta just couldn't believe it. The intruders escaped. Or so did they, because they're going back to their ship until Diana, Hal, and Martian Manhunter appear to face the villains. And Hal takes on Atrocitus, Diana takes on Aresria, and Martian Manhunter takes on Malefic. And so it ends up being an epic fight. However, the villains end up escaping. And Diana comes to her mother as to why did Aresria, Atrocitus, and Malefic come for the mother box. We then get some backstory on the mother box, that the mother boxes are from another planet outside of Earth, and that one of them landed on Themyscira, the other was in Oa, which, believe it or not, Atrocitus and Malefic secretly has one of their hands on. And the other happens to be in Gorilla City, which is where Gorilla Grodd is at now. And so Hal, Barry, and Superman and Martian Manhunter come to face Grodd and Malefic. And this leads to a huge fight where Grodd summons his gorilla minions to make sure that the mother box doesn't fall in the hero's hands, and of course, the villains end up escaping with the mother box. Now, where is the invasion going to be held at? Metropolis. Apparently, Lex is now pleased that all three mother boxes are in his hands, and so begins to, manage to combine the mother boxes to open a portal to Apocalypse just as the heroes arrive. And so the Justice League need to come together to face off the Parademons who are invading Earth. Darkseid will not be joining the invasion because reasons. But who is leading the invasion would be Steppenwolf, who I could picture possibly being played by someone like Fred Tatasciore. As he's leading the invasion, it's up to the heroes, the entire Justice League, to take down this big invasion / threat, and so Atrocitus and Malefic are leading the invasion. And so Hal and Martian Manhunter face off their opponents and manage to defeat them. And then the rest of the League come face to face with Lex and what's left of the League. There's Batman versus Joker, Diana versus Ares, Oliver and Dinah versus Merlin and Count Vertigo, and Barry versus Grodd, as well as Clark versus Lex. The Batman versus Joker fight ends first for obvious reasons, while the rest take on longer. The Oliver and Dinah versus Vertigo and Merlin fight, that ends second. But the rest of the fights go on long. And Lex then puts on his powered armor suit to fight Superman. And as Superman is getting the upper hand on Lex, he is punched by Steppenwolf. And then he faces Steppenwolf. And essentially, Diana comes in to help, and this leads to an almost final battle like in the Justice League movie, kind of like the Snyder Cut, with a mix of the theatrical cut here, but with a lot of the intensity toned back for obvious reasons. And they managed to stop the portal from, letting in more parademons by stealing one of the boxes, because let's just say Flash manages to get his hands on one of the mother boxes, and with the help of Hal, they manage to pull out two of the boxes, and the portal starts to close, and Superman shoots Steppenwolf with his lasers, and Steppenwolf starts falling back along with what's left of the Parademon army. I say this because some of the Parademons would be defeated and killed for obvious reasons. I know the heroes don't kill their villains, but they're Parademons, so killing can be somewhat justifiable here. They could also be left injured and left escaping. I don't think it really matters. In the end, Lex and all the villains are captured and are sent away to prison. And the Justice League are held as heroes. That celebration is like when the heroes were celebrated at the end of The Incredibles and Incredibles 2. And the museum that was there earlier, the museum they were in earlier, that becomes the Hall of Justice, which becomes like their new headquarters. But they decide to go on their separate lives. Hal returns to Oa. Martian Manhunter takes Megan into the Hall of Justice to show her. Diana returns to Star City, or whatever her city is called, I forgot. Hal and Dinah return to Connor and Sarah. Barry returns to Central City to meet up with Wally and Iris. Bruce returns to Gotham, and Clark returns to Metropolis to reunite with Lois and Jimmy. But that doesn't end here, because we have a cliffhanger. We see Steppenwolf, along with what's left of the Parademon army, and Steppenwolf is left injured, approaching his master about the hero's victory and how the invasion failed. And then someone with red eyes looks at Steppenwolf and comes to the conclusion they will begin their invasion on Earth again, sooner or later. And this turns out to be, you guessed it, Darkseid, who I could picture being played by Tony Todd. May he rest in peace. So that's what the Justice League were in Green Lantern, the animated series. I hope you all enjoyed all the build-up that I've been progressing since July. I knew some of you would have wanted me to at least connect all my videos all in the same universe rather than making them loosely canon. So, this is the finale. I'll be making the epilogue, which is my own DC animated universe, where I focus on like the spin-off shows of those heroes. And yes, there would be a Justice League spin-off. They definitely could have done a Justice League spin-off show in this universe, but anyways, I will see you all later.